Alexa, stop! Don't worry, we won't sing for you today, but we will tell you about the time we taught a lot of other people how to sing.
Welcome back to Around the World with Joshua and Alyssa. Today we are headed back to Ghana to begin the show, and we are going to tell you about the main reason that we were there. So I went in 2018, and then we both went together in 2019, both for the same reason, and that was to do a music camp with the people from the churches there. And so today we're going to tell you about that music camp. It's a lot of information to try to put into 5-10 minutes. So we'll do our best. There's so much more that we could tell you that we're not going to cover because it was just a great time.
But if you want to know more, you can always leave a comment or message us, and we would be really happy to video call and tell you lots and lots about it. And we would love for you to go if you think God would lead you in that direction. Yeah. So get excited.
Because we can't go and do this every single year. We wish we could. And I wish I could go back to Brazil every year and help with their music camp. And a lot of other things we wish we could do every single year. But we can't. So we'd love for some of you to be able to do this someday in Ghana. And now we're going to tell you about it and why it's so great.
Yep.
So the music camp, we had our first one in 2018. This had been a dream of Mrs. Karis Mapes, the missionary who we looked at, maybe 9 weeks ago. I think it was 9 weeks ago, week 4. We told you about the Mapes. But this has been a dream of hers for many years to have a music camp there in Ghana, because the people there love music.
They
absolutely love it.
To sing. They love to make music and record music, and it's just a part of who they are.
Yeah, you can see that here in this picture. You can see in this guy's face just the joy and the passion with which he sings. And this isn't just a picture I pulled out of all the others, because everybody there was like that. However, the problem is that they don't have all the same musical training and education that we have here in the United States. And so this is something that Mrs. Mapes has wanted for a while, to have a camp like this so that they could further teach people how to develop their musical abilities and use it in their churches.
Yep. So when we went, we had a class, kind of like a beginner class on music, and then a more advanced class for the students who had done the beginner class last year. And it was kind of my job to teach the beginner class, and I was like, what am I going to teach? How am I going to teach them music? But basically, most kids nowadays now in the States would know this information just from being in school, because you'd have a music class from like probably kindergarten age all the way through. But they don't have that great opportunity. So instead we got to start with the basics, talking about musical alphabet, reading notes, counting, lots of rhythm stuff, and just all the basics of reading music so that they could pick up a sheet of music and hopefully be able to read it. And it was a lot of fun. These were the most excited students and most ready to learn students I've ever taught in my entire life.
Yep.
They wanted to soak up everything I had to say. And a lot of times I would say class was done and they would stay in their seats because they were writing something else or they had another question. They were just so excited to learn. It made it a blast to teach them.
Yeah, so Alyssa taught that one class, and she also got to spend some time in the afternoon teaching hand chimes, which, if you are not familiar with hand chimes, they're a lot like handbells, but they have a little different sound, and they don't cost quite as much to buy them. And so they have a set there, so Alyssa got to spend some time teaching them how to read notes, how to play them on the hand chimes.
How to count. Very important.
So this is a picture of her group of hand chimers.
And they were so excited to learn the chimes. I played a solo the first night just to kind of let them see what they sounded like. And then this was the group that turned out to play, and they were very excited to get the opportunity to play. It was really fun to teach them. But that's hard. 1 week for a song for new hand chime ringers.
I got to teach a class as well. In the afternoon, I taught a class on how to write music. And if you know anything about writing music, which most of you may not know, it is a lot of work. A lot of work. And I had 4 days to try to teach them how to write music. So I didn't get as far as I would have liked, but the information I did give them, like Alyssa said, they just wrote everything down. They tried to take as much as they could from that short time. So I hope I was able to help a little bit, but it's just really hard to teach all of that within such a short period of time. We also both helped lead choir. So we had a concert at the end of the week, and this is a picture of me practicing one of the songs that I was leading them. We also had a friend who went with me in 2018, the first year, and I met her actually at a music camp in Brazil back in 2013. This is Olivia Ferguson. She is way better at music than the two of us combined. She is a high school music teacher, and so she teaches high schoolers who have varying levels of musical education. Some who maybe don't care much, and some who really have a passion for it, and she just teaches them everything that she knows during the school year. She has also studied music a lot more than us in college and even beyond that, and is a great singer, a great piano player, a great cello player, a great music writer,
and a great conductor.
Yes.
She's very good at conducting and keeping everybody together and helping everybody pronounce things carefully, which is tricky, especially when you're dealing with people who speak a different language. But she did it so well. It was really fun to work with her and learn from her too.
One of the best things about working at this camp was learning from Olivia. Learning how to be a better musician myself and how to teach others, just watching her and the way she did things. Here is a class that Olivia was teaching, or else this might have been choir practice, but this was at the beginning where she's doing vocal exercises to help us warm up our voices, to help us stretch out our bodies. And so it was a lot of fun to take pictures during this time because we made weird faces. We stretched and did all these funny dances all together. All these things that got us ready and excited to sing. In Ghana, the men have a lot more privileges than the women do. And that was even seen at our music camp, where we had about twice as many men as women. And not because we designed the music camp that way, that's just how it happened, that we had that many more men apply to come. And we really encourage ladies to join us, but it's hard to get them to sometimes, just because of the way their culture is. And so these ladies really had to work hard to sing at a level that would match the men who had twice as many people. But they did well. And they were a lot of fun to work with also. It was fun for me to take pictures this week because a lot of these pictures you see, if you want to get pictures like this here in the States during a music class or school or anything, you have to set people up and say, okay, you stand here and you sit here and you smile and you point at this. Here, I didn't have to do any of that. These are all just natural pictures. I didn't say anything. I just took pictures as they were happening. They were not posed. And that's because these people wanted so much to learn and do the things that we have to pose people to make them look like they're doing. These people just did it because they were that excited about learning. This is the one day that Alyssa accidentally went late by like 5 minutes.
It might have been more like 15.
Okay, well they had a 15-minute break, and I think you went about 10 minutes over.
Yeah.
So their break was almost over, but nobody knew. Nobody stopped her. Nobody was looking at their watch. They didn't care.
I just felt really bad.
But they wanted to learn everything she was saying. It's not like us when we listen for that bell to ring in school, or we check our watches to see how much time we have left. They just listened, and when she went over and even went into their break, they didn't care. They just thought it was funny because they are having so much fun learning the music. We had people of all ages from like
Just little high school
kids. Yeah, we probably had like 11, 12-year-olds, maybe a couple of them, all the way up to people in their 40s, I think. Maybe older. I can't remember how old this guy was. This guy's one of the oldest ones in the group, and he thought he was coming to learn piano.
He thought he could learn in a week.
Yeah, his church sent him to come learn piano in a week because they thought that he could, and that wasn't actually what we're doing. We were teaching him the basics of music, not teaching someone how to play piano that quickly. But at the end of the week, he was so thankful for what he had learned. He came up and thanked us and told us that he wanted to come back next time. He did not learn what he thought he was going to come for, but what he did get was
super valuable for him.
And he loved it. Let's see. This is a picture of one of the ladies who is writing the musical notes on the board with Olivia standing behind her watching her. So doing some participation there and using what she had just learned. And then, as I mentioned earlier, at the end of the week we had a concert for local churches and for the community. And here you see in the middle the Mapes, Mr. and Mrs. Mapes down below, and then above them Alyssa and I and Olivia, and then all of our students for the week. And we miss them. Some of them we may never see again, unfortunately. Some of them we hope we do see again. We'd love to go back and do another week of this someday. But for now, we'll have to wait. And
we'd love for you to go
if
music is your strength, or you know somebody who might want to serve God in this way. We'd love to connect you with the Mapes and with the Melody Camp, Making Melody Camp in Ghana.
Yeah, and you don't even have to be a great musician. Like, you can just be a okay musician, like us.
But just want to serve.
Yes, just you know enough. You know how to read notes. You know how to play a few songs on the piano. That's all it takes, because these people know so little that what you do know is probably something that they can learn from.
Yep. It's fun.
Last week, some of you, maybe all of you, found the camera that we had kind of hidden here. It was a big camera.
Kind of hard to miss it.
Yeah. So today we have something else. Hopefully you can find that if you haven't already. But for now, we're going to get right into Alyssa's missionary story, week 3. So we have 2 more weeks after this. You won't want to miss a single episode.
Nope.
It's starting to get exciting.
Yeah. I love this story so much. Well, we paused last time when Mary went out into the jungle, and when she was out in the jungle visiting somebody, there was a big storm that came up, and she and her children stayed in the house, and the tornado was taking like the roof off, and it was really windy, and they just sang. They spent the time praising God and talking to God, even in the midst of the scariness of the storm. Well, after the storm was over and Mary and all of her children were safe, Mary did end up getting sick. And this ended up being kind of a pattern for Mary, that she would get sick off and on, and her health wasn't really all that great. But she loved the African people, and she loved the people of Calabar so much that she still kept pushing forward to serve and to love them. Now, last time we talked about how she moved from Duketown to Old Town. Well then, Old Town wasn't enough. She felt like she had shared so much with those people, and there were people in those villages that were leading church services and teaching other people about God, and she was ready to move on and teach some more people. And Mary always wants to go where it's dangerous, right? So as soon as she told her people in Old Town that she was ready to move on and that she wanted to move to a new town, they said, "No, Mary, you can't. You'll get sick. Your health is not good. The people are mean. They won't be kind to you. You shouldn't do it." It's never scared Mary away before yet. So she got her children together and she decided to go to a village that was close to where she wanted to go, kind of like a little base. So she had visited this village before. It was the village of Oakanyung, and she knew the chief there, and she would start there, and then she thought she could go out to the other surrounding villages and tribes and get to know the people. So Chief Edom sent her a canoe with 30 paddlers. That's a lot of paddlers. And she packed up herself and her supplies and her children, and they got ready to go to this new village. She also brought another missionary with her just to help her kind of get settled in, Mr. Bishop. So they went down the river, and of course there are lots of things to watch out for on the river. Even there's a story of how they were riding along in the canoe and all of a sudden something came up out of the water and it was the head of a hippopotamus. And Mary grabbed a tea kettle and she smacked the hippopotamus on the nose with it, and it just kind of disappeared back into the water. If you're ever interested, a hippopotamus is a crazy fast animal. It's not one that I'd really want to mess with all that much, and there's some cool videos about them on YouTube. But anyways, God protected Mary, even from all those scary animals. So they got to the point where they couldn't take the canoe any farther, and they pulled off onto the side, and Mary began to unload with her children, and they began the long walk, a 3-mile walk to the village where they were going to go. Now, it was dark outside, which meant it was very dark in the jungle. There weren't any streetlights or anything. So it was really scary for Mary and for the children. And it was a little bit wet and damp, and the children were scared. They could hear the noises from the animals in the jungle. Probably couldn't see the animals, but they knew they were there. So Mary began to sing silly songs and do things to help the children just keep moving and walking until they got to the village. Well, they got to the village, and it was quiet. There were no people out, and normally when Mary arrived, there was a lot of excitement and the people were happy to see her, but there was nobody there. She couldn't find anybody. Finally, she found a few slaves, and they said that the whole village had gone to another village for a funeral, but they found a place for Mary and the children to stay, and Mary wanted to help the children change out of their clothes because they were all wet and tired and muddy from the walk, but she didn't know where the paddlers were. They should have been bringing all the rest of the supplies with. But she settled all the children down and she began to look and see what had happened. Well, the missionary came and he had some dry clothes for the children, but he said, "Well, Mary, all the paddlers stayed back at the river because they were too scared to come through the jungle at night." Mary was so upset. So she walked all the way back to the canoe, 3 more miles. She woke up the paddlers, made them pick up all the stuff, and they walked all the way back to the village because she was very upset that they were too scared to come. That was a lot of walking for one night, too. Well, finally, exhausted, she went to sleep, and early the next morning, she felt sore and tired all over from all of that extra walking. But she knew it was Sunday morning, and it was time to hold a church service. So she gathered her children together and the missionary, and they had a service. They sang songs to God. She told a Bible story, and a few of the slaves from the area kind of watched on and looked to see what was happening. But most of the people weren't back from the village. Eventually, the people began to return after the funeral, and the chief welcomed Mary, and he gave her a place to stay, and she began her ministry in that area. Now, Mary learned that she needed to know what was happening around her, and she needed to have somebody else to help her. And Mary met a lady named Ma Amy, and Ma Amy became Mary's closest friend. And Ma Amy would help Mary know when she needed to go to another tribe to help them get ready from fighting. The people in the area believed in witchcraft. They believed that people could give curses to other people and that villages could put curses on other people, and that would cause all sorts of problems, and then they would just start fighting each other. So Ma Amy and Mary kind of got a secret code system. Ma Amy would send Mary a messenger with an empty medicine bottle. And if Mary got that empty medicine bottle, it meant Mary had to hurry and go somewhere fast because there was going to be a fight or something was going to happen. So the messenger would bring it to Mary and then would tell Mary this message: "Run, Ma, run." Because remember, they'd call her Ma. That was kind of her nickname. So that became kind of like the secret code. And Mary helped stop a lot of fighting from the people in the area because she would hurry and she would get there and she would make the people talk. The two tribes talk instead of fighting right away. And a lot of times she would just bring her knitting and she would sit there and she would knit. She got a lot done while she was just there, but it was a lot of scary times because there could have been a lot of fighting right in front of her. But God used Mary to stop a lot of fighting between the people and help them learn to communicate and talk out their problems. Well, one time, Ma Amy sent Mary an empty medicine bottle, and the messenger said that there was a chief nearby who was very sick, and this chief really did need some medicine. And it was raining and storming, but Mary began the journey to look and to see if she could get to where that chief was, because she knew if the chief died, there would be a lot of people who would be killed, because that was part of the tradition. If the chief died, they would kill a lot of people from the village to die and be buried with the chief. And she didn't want that. She wanted those people to know about God. So she started walking through the night in all the rain and storm, trying to get all the way to the village. Finally, she made it to the village. She found the chief and she prayed and asked for God's help on how she should help this chief. And little by little, the chief got better. And he was very thankful, and the people started to listen, and Mary was able to share God's love with those people too. And after all of these trips, Mary would return back to Oakanyong, and she would be very tired and very exhausted. And with all of her children, she just lived in such a small space. Well, the chief of the village, Chief Edom, had promised to build Mary a house for many years, and she would always ask him, especially when she got back from a long trip, "How about a house?" And he would always have an excuse. Well, after this trip, Mary got back and she saw there were some workers beginning to build her a home. And it was a beautiful house. Mary loved it. She was so thankful to have somewhere to stay with her children. One thing that she did wish, though, is that it had windows and a door. But there weren't any windows in the area. So she wrote to a friend back in Scotland. And one day Mary woke up and she heard some whistling in the jungle. And it was a man sent all the way from Scotland with windows and doors for her home. And he put them in her home and he helped expand her home so it was perfect, not just for Mary and her children, but for other people, for other tribes who lived nearby, or for people who were sick, or people who needed to be safe. They could come and stay with Mary. And it gave Mary a place to call her own, and it gave her a place to share with so many people about God's love. Well, Mary kept going out into the jungle and going farther away and helping with all these different people, and her body got really worn down and very tired, and she began to get sick, so sick that she needed to go back to Scotland. So do you think she'll ever be able to come back to Calabar? Will she be able to tell more people about God? Well, what will happen to all the children that she has that she's taking care of? You're going to have to come back next week and find out the next part of the story and see what God does for Mary. I always love that story. Gets me so excited. Hi.
Hi. I'm back. Okay. Thank you, Alyssa. We are going to go and look at some missionary friends that our church supports in South America. So now switching from Africa over to South America.
Yep.
So their names are David and Christy Flink, and they live in Antofagasta, Chile. They are located on the Pacific coastline in northern Chile. They have 4 kids. This is a recent picture, I believe. I think the oldest is the one in the red, and he just finished his freshman year at Faith Baptist Bible College. And all of you, if you are going to college someday, should go to Faith Baptist Bible College and follow his example.
Shameless commercial.
He made a smart move. The second son, right there in the maroon, he is going to Faith as a freshman this fall. They, let's see. Let's keep going. Here's another picture of their family, and as you can see, the oldest is not in that picture because he was at college this last year. I believe that David Flink is from Minnesota originally. And you can see in that picture there that he's wearing a Minnesota Twins shirt. So he's a good guy.
Representing.
Uh-huh. So they live, as I mentioned, on the Pacific coastline. And we're going to tell you a little bit more about their... Well, no, let's just do that now. We asked them what's something unique about where you live. And they told us that they live in the middle of the driest desert in the world. And when you look at this picture, that's not hard to believe. I don't see much green.
Nope.
And the little green that is there, I'm guessing it's probably with like sprinklers to make things green. So this is a picture of their city. Here's another view from closer up. You can see a little grass down there. I'm sure that's watered, but everything else is pretty dry. And even though they live next to the ocean, they get less than 0.01 inches of rain every year.
Such a little bit.
That's like...
Welcome to the Atacama Desert.
Yeah, like, how do you even measure that much? That's so small. It almost never rains where they live. They have 330 days of sun per year out of 365 days. The climate is very mild all year round. A hot summer day would be between 70 to 80 degrees with little humidity. I really like this. Actually sounds like great weather to me. And a normal winter day would be between 55 and 65 degrees.
That's nice winter. I could do that.
But the fact that it has almost no humidity is something that I think would be very enjoyable. Mm-hmm. A lot nicer than Guam. But that's my personal opinion. We asked, what are ways that they build relationships with the people there? And they said that they interact with their neighbors in conversations and caring for their needs, and their children participate in sports clubs. Now, they are church planting down there, and that doesn't mean that all they do every single day is go door to door and tell people about Jesus and then try to get people to come to church every Sunday. What that means is that they live normal lives, and they're just doing it in a different place and among a different group of people, and they are working hard to build relationships with all these people to show them the love of God, so that those people will come to a saving knowledge of God, and hopefully then become a part of their church, which then grows and hopefully leads to the beginning of more churches. And so they put a big emphasis on getting to know their neighbors and getting their kids out into the community to know people, like through sports, so that they can build relationships with these people and help them come to know Jesus Christ. Here's another picture inside one of the churches there, and he is up front speaking. Their children in the country there go to school and they wear school uniforms. Now this is a lot like a lot of the other countries we've talked about and places that we have visited. It's very common outside of America for people to wear uniforms when they go to school. You don't see that too much here. The education is not very good in their public schools. And I know that a lot of people will look at our public schools here and say the same thing, but on average, it's still probably better than what they have down there. So when they say that it's not very good there, it's really not very good. If you want a good school, you go to private school down there. Also a lot like other places around the world, and like where Alyssa taught was a private school, and so it was a really good school.
But it's very expensive to send your children to private school.
And that's the problem. So these schools are really good, but you pay what you get. You pay for what you get.
Yep.
The Flinks, they homeschool their children, so it's not quite so expensive, but they get a better education than going to the public schools down there.
Yeah. All around the world you can find homeschoolers, it seems like.
Yep. So here is another picture of a church meeting. Here's a picture of their kids and some other children that they are doing ministry to. So this is one of the ways that they build friendships with the families, is do different things with the kids. Here's a picture of their kids receiving all their books from the States for like homeschooling and other things. And when they all arrived, it was like Christmas for them, because they got their schoolwork and maybe some other things that they enjoyed reading. Now these pictures, I believe these next two pictures are actually from the States, like here in Minnesota. But just to give you an idea of the things that they do down there, getting involved with sports, then when they are back here on furlough, they can also use sports, and their kids can do that to really reach out to kids here, like with day camps or maybe VBS. So these pictures are not taken down in Chile, but they are a couple. They give you a kind of an idea of maybe what the kids would do down there in order to get to know the other children that they live among. Now, we asked how we can pray for them this week. They just arrived in Minnesota on Thursday. So 3 days ago, they just arrived in Minnesota for their furlough. And here's a picture of them flying back to the States, all wearing their masks because of the coronavirus. And here's a picture from 3 years ago when they were on furlough and all of their stuff. Because when they're on furlough, they're here for several months. They are coming back to report to their churches, tell us about the ministry, and so they need a lot of things to bring with them so that they can live here for the next few months. So you can pray for them as they begin to travel around here in Minnesota and maybe some other places, telling churches what God has done in their ministry for the last few years.
We also asked them what's something that they wish people would ask them about, but people never really ask. And they said they wish that people would ask how their children serve in ministry, or how their children adjust to the many changes and transitions as missionary kids or third culture kids. I think I could relate to that after having lived on the mission field and seen missionary kids. And it's true, they are kind of third culture kids. It's not like they are completely American because they've lived in another culture, but then their home culture might be a little different from what's their outside culture. That's a good thing to keep in mind, just asking people what it's like for their kids in their day-to-day life and how they're involved. Because when you are a missionary family, it's your whole family. It's not just the mom and dad who are the missionaries. It's the whole family, the kids and everything. That's a good reminder to make sure we're asking what their kids are doing and how ministry life impacts their kids as well.
Yeah. It's so easy, though, when we see missionaries to ask them about what the parents are doing. But we often forget to ask the kids what they do. And we don't ask the kids what life is like for them because we assume that their life is like what everybody else's is wherever they live. But it's not. And sometimes we see them back here in America and we think, oh, they're Americans. They know everything we know and they know how to do everything we know how to do. Well,
But
not
they
always
don't.
the case because they don't actually live here all the time.
Now, technology's helped with a lot of that because you don't feel like you miss too much. But even in the time that I would be on Guam and then come back to the States, I feel like there'd be things that people would be doing here that I was like, well, I don't know anything about that because it hadn't made it to Guam or it just wasn't something that was culturally relevant to where I was living. So I would imagine the same is for missionary kids too.
Sometimes that can be hard for kids because people just really do not understand what life is like for them, but they never really ask either. They just assume that they know what life is like for them. So if you ever meet missionaries and missionary kids who come to visit your church or camp or wherever you might see them, ask them what life is like. Ask them what things may be different for them. Or maybe something they miss about living there or living here. Or just get to know them rather than just assuming you think you know what life is like for them.
If you want to know more about the Flinks, they have a Facebook page called Flinks in Chile, and they'll do updates and pictures and all sorts of stuff about their ministry. We had a fun time looking through it.
They have a lot of pictures.
So that's kind of a fun way for you to keep up with them, and maybe that'll give you some weekly prayer requests. But for now, you can definitely pray for them as they travel around and let churches know about what they're doing in South America.
Yeah. If you go to our church, you will see them in November. They're coming to visit us. If you don't go to our church, well,
you should
might,
come
yes.
in November.
You might still know them from some other place because they have a lot of supporting churches. But you also can just go onto their Facebook page and learn more about them because we don't have time to tell you everything about them right here. I think that's it for this week. Thank you for joining us again. We will be back in Ghana, not really, but just telling you about it again next week.
Yep.
And we look forward to continuing the missionary story and visiting somebody else, somewhere else in the world.
Yep.
We'll see you now. Oh, I forgot. After we say goodbye here, I'm going to put a video of our time at the music camp in Ghana. So in case you're interested in watching that, you don't have to. You can just stop it right here. But if you're interested in watching this 5-minute video and hearing some of the singing and seeing some of the things that we did down there, keep watching, and we'll have that right here at the end.
Yep.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
In my early stage of life, I wasn't so a happy person. I wasn't a happy person. By the time I tuned myself to gospel music, it became a change in my life.
I learned about how to, like the science of doti la sofa, and how to fix a note after the other. And I learned about the notes, the names of the notes: half, quarter, whole, and dotted half, and dotted whole.